So, the title of the show today is I Am So Dizzy. I wish I could have a soundtrack behind us. Are you in your fourth or fifth decade and suddenly the room is spinning? You have that sense that, like Alice in Wonderland, you're falling through the looking glass and out of nowhere, all kinds of symptoms are happening? Is the world around you moving too fast and you just want to jump off the merry-go-round? Welcome, this is GynoCurious, and I'm your host, Dr. Amy Novatt. From both sides of the speculum, we are here to investigate what it means to be a healer and to be healed. Please send your comments to comments@radiofreerhinecliff.org. Tell us all about your concerns and worries and dizziness. We'd love to hear from you today. So today I am thrilled to welcome back my fellow vulva haver for an episode of Vulva Views with Allison Chawla. We have not spoken in just way too long, Allison.
I absolutely agree. That's why I could barely let go of you when I saw you walk in and I started hugging you.
There are just people in my life who come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Life is busy, as I started this conversation with, and who I don't see for a while. And then I see, and I'm reminded of how much, one, I love you and I'm concerned about you and want you to be well. And it's also, oh, right, that we haven't seen each other. And if you could press the video, that would be great. See, you know what? We started this conversation with technical, let's say,
disadvantages.
Yeah. Anyway, we're trying to video it.
This is what editing is for.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, here I am with Allison Chawla, and I'm thrilled to have you back in the studio with GynoCurious.
I am thrilled to be back here with you and this fantastic show.
Yeah.
I have not been here chatting, but I have been stalking you and watching you online. Having a great time listening.
Thank you.
But I love being here.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk today about this midlife. And we've talked about the perimenopause before.
Yes, we have.
And I spoke to you, I don't know, a few weeks back or something, and you mentioned something about vertigo and dizziness, and could this possibly be part of the perimenopause? And I was thinking about it from a literal point of view, the medical perspective, but also just the metaphorical one of how our fourth and early fifth decade can be a time of just so much.
So much.
And I kind of want to just start with, I know that you've been on this really terrific, interesting exploration, kind of bringing on and letting go, which I think is part of what happens when we're spinning, is there's a sense of holding on to things that are important to us, and then also letting go of things that are just no longer serving us in a healthy sort of way. So I think I want to start with you're getting on a plane to Thailand and what that was about, because that was a big trip.
It was a big trip. It was a big trip. And yet it made perfect sense and did not feel like a big deal to me, because I feel like my entire life led up to that decision and that moment. And I had also been to Thailand before because of my practices and research and just admiration of the Buddhist philosophy. And also my husband's father was he was a Thai Indian. So my husband has many, many relatives in Thailand. But for me, when I kind of look backwards at life, I realized that the moment that I met my husband, or he asked me out, and I had this intuition of, that's it. We're going to get married. I feel history. I feel family. And one of the monks told me once, you recognize destiny by looking backwards. And so I just sort of felt like everything I've done led up to that decision.
So tell us, what did you do when you went to Thailand that was different from visiting family?
I went from the airport to the monastery to ordain as a Buddhist nun. I went there. I gave them my belongings and my clothing. And for the record, I hardly brought anything with me. I had gotten in touch with the monks and the nuns ahead of time, and I asked them, well, what can I bring you? Because I'm more or less going to bring an empty suitcase. And I filled it with their requests. And when I got there, I had a nun that I'm friendly with, and she had arranged for the nun clothing to be available for me. So I arrived, I got changed. I had to sit for about an hour and recite prayers and take 8 precepts, which essentially is like, I will not eat after a certain hour. I will not speak any harm towards anyone. There's 8 of them. It's similar to other religions, like the 10 Commandments, for example, if you're someone that was raised Christian. But I had to make these 8 promises. And then for the next 2 weeks, I slept from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. I had a tiny meal at 6:30 a.m. and a tiny meal at 11:30 a.m. And then for the rest of the time, I was practicing some sort of meditation. And it was magical.
Yeah.
And for the record, I was not hungry at all in the evening because I was so full from these practices.
Were these group meditations or were you alone in your meditation
They were group.
space?
Some of them, we had chanting meditations that we did, walking meditation, bowing meditation, silent meditation, group meditation that was, led by the master monk that would teach us lessons of kindness and forgiveness and really just being a good person and being healthy, respecting others and respecting yourself. And then I would also be taken to other areas of Thailand to work and heal and act as a helper for the monastery with the monks.
Oh, that must have been incredible.
It was the best thing I have ever done for myself.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think it's incidental that you're doing it at this point in your life. Does it feel like, why now? Why now?
Great question. I think that it actually aligns perfectly with the practice of Buddhism. I think that I have been working to learn many lessons and better myself and grow in many ways, not just for myself, for my daughters, for the people around me, my patients, friends, just whatever areas that I could be better in. And midlife is certainly a transition. I don't like to call it a crisis because I quite frankly think that I'm entering the peak of my life and the best years of my life. And so it just came together in this way and with a very fortuitous force and made perfect sense. And I had no questions or doubts about it.
There's just a clarity in your face and your voice and your words that is inspiring.
Thank you.
Because so often, I think I don't know if women do it more than men. I don't know. But we wonder, should we take this time for ourselves? Am I leaving my kids? Should I leave my kids? Should I leave my work? Blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. Always seeing the obstacles before we see the gifts or the rewards of taking time for ourselves. Not just for ourselves, but for our community around us.
Absolutely. And I had an experience when I considered going because it had been coming up for me for a while. And I did worry about my children and my husband and leaving him, even my patients. And then I just woke up one morning and the calling was so strong. And the insight that me being gone would also be a strengthening element for them came to me. And that was the morning I went to my husband and I said, I have to go. I have to go to Thailand again and I have to go by myself. And he said, okay, let's find you a flight.
Good
so
man.
I'm very lucky. Yeah, I have a supportive partner. But I think that, I grew in ways that I could never have imagined I would grow, but in turn, so did my family.
Yeah.
And so did all of the people around me.
Yeah. Can you talk about that growth? I mean, what is it? Sometimes this is hard to put into words, but if you were to try, how would you describe it? Because one of the things that I'm getting from you is that part of your journey was finding a voice, a sense of being that is not just about you and your microcosm, your immediate family, but the world at large. So what would some of those lessons be?
A lot of it, it's funny. I think of the line, let it go. And there's a lot of irony surrounding that just because Disney has made it very popular and,
right.
But I really learned so much more of what was important and what is not when I was out there. And that does not just apply to material possessions or desires for titles. It really comes down to things like, is it really important for me to hold this grudge? Is it really important for me to not say sorry because my ego is too inflated? And, little things that we overlook every day or that we think don't have a large impact on our lives. And yet something as simple as saying, I'm sorry, or something as simple as forgiving someone has such a powerful ripple effect that I have experienced that the entire world around you can feel.
Yeah. And it's amazing. I mean, this is going to sound so obvious or simplistic, or others have said it, but it's worth saying again. Holding grudges, being angry, being irritable, man, is it toxic to the mind and the body. And holding on to it, I think it becomes really a cellular phenomenon.
I think cancer comes from remaining angry and from holding grudges and from refusing to forgive. And as simple as it is, we overlook the simple things.
Right.
And so I do believe that it's very important for people to hear this stuff again. Like, you don't think it's a big deal because you think that all of these important jobs around you are more important, or the more important messages, but it all starts from that like one tiny little cell, speaking of cellularly, that grows with positive energy.
Yeah.
Like a plant with water and good soil.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was somewhat joking in my introduction today about being dizzy during the perimenopause. And it is, in fact, a symptom that people don't talk a lot about in the perimenopause. But I like it on this metaphorical level, too, because what you're describing is going to a place that's quite grounded, going to a place where meditation and chanting. There are many reasons that there are customs that embrace these practices. But one of the reasons for meditation, one of the reasons for chanting is to slow the heart rate down, to quiet the body, and to feel less of the stimuli around us that's constantly make us, run, race, feel the pressures of everyday life.
Absolutely. And something else that I find very interesting that the master and the monks will say frequently is, in order for you to be a very compassionate person, someone who's very understanding, very patient with others, you have to have gone through a certain amount of suffering yourself. And so this idea of being turned upside down really goes hand in hand with meditation and Buddhism as well, because they will say that some of the greatest healers are those who have suffered the most because they have compassion for everyone and anything that is being experienced. And I really love that, because I know I've mentioned it. Some Americans, I've heard them say, oh, people who become therapists did it because they were, they're trying to heal themselves. But how incredible. Like, wouldn't you, when you've experienced pain, if you have any empathy, you never want anybody else to feel like that.
That's right.
And that's the healthiest way to deal with something.
And what's wrong with healing yourself? I mean,
well,
Oh,
that's the other thing.
Right?
Like, sometimes you need to be turned upside down and spun around in order to really want to heal yourself. Getting to that point of discomfort.
Right.
Where the only way to really save yourself from it is to heal yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're listening and you are feeling the room spin around you, one practical approach is to sit still and try to meditate. And there's many, many ways in which meditation can happen. And I often hear women in particular say, I can't sit still. I just tried. I've tried. I can't do it. And I would suggest that, you start with a couple of minutes and that's it. And just breathe or count or think of the colors around you. There's so many ways in which to just start developing a muscle around meditation, right?
Yeah, and I meditate a lot, and I still have this perimenopausal dizziness. I went to go put my, I know my hair is pretty short, but I still like to wrap it in a towel after I shower. And I was in a rush. I'm usually conscious lately of this because of how unpleasant it is. But I flip my head over and I put the towel on. And then as I flip my head back, I felt like I was in a fun room. And I grabbed onto the walls. I grabbed onto the towel bar and the sink. And the room around me was just spinning. It is something that I really thought, my reaction was like, great, I have a brain tumor. That was my first thought.
Yep. It's not an unusual one because, again, this is not a symptom that's often discussed around the menopause or perimenopause.
Why is that? Because it is a really intense experience, and I have many friends going through it right now, and I even read about it in a book that became very popular, and yet before these experiences and interactions, I had never gotten a warning about it.
Well, just to, remind us all, before the last several years where talking about the menopause and perimenopause is kind of it's having its moment, that before there just wasn't a lot out there. And certainly, physicians were poorly trained about it. Even still today, you ask residents whether they're learning about the perimenopause, and they're like, nope. Maybe we spend an hour or two learning about what it looks like physiologically. Estrogen levels are lower, progesterone levels are lower.
Hot once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the focus is hot flushes. And what's so interesting is when a group of women were interviewed, it was a very informal test. I think it was like 100,000 women through, it was one of these telehealth communities. Mm-hmm. And they asked women to list what their, 6 major symptoms were. The first 3 were issues around mood, sleep, and mental status, a brain fog.
Oh, my God, I have that.
Yeah, but it's all related to the brain. That's where this vertigo is about.
Yeah.
We, for so long, didn't realize, we thought estrogen receptors were in the ovaries.
Right.
And maybe the breasts and maybe the bones. And that was kind of it. That was the map. And even then, we didn't know what the map really looked like because your map and my map are 2 different
Completely
things.
Different.
Well, now we're discovering there are estrogen receptors in the brain. Estrogen receptors essentially in almost all major organs and throughout the body. And the newer studies are looking at how diminished estrogen affects all of our neurology, including this phenomenon of dizziness or vertigo. And it's so real. It's so powerful and unpleasant.
It scares the daylights out of me when it happens.
Yeah.
And once I almost vomited.
Yep.
But really, I had never really experienced what it meant to see the room spinning. I'd heard people say it, and I was like, oh, I guess they just mean they're like really dizzy or their head hurts. And I literally saw the room spin.
Right.
In front of me.
Yeah.
Like a barrel at a fun house.
Yeah. And this is not lightheadedness out there. This is not a feeling of like, oh, maybe I should have had more to drink, or I'm feeling a little fatigue or I'm too hot in the room. It's not that. This is where literally, as Allison's describing, you feel like the room is...
You see it move. It's like an illusion. You think there's an illusion being experienced. It's actually a visual phenomenon as well.
And when I first learned about it, the early writings about it was all about, guess what the assumption was? Hysteria, anxiety.
How did I know?
You were just an anxious woman. and of course, thankfully, we are beginning to learn just all this physiology that's explaining. I mean, there is just a long, long list. So just to make some recommendations, if you're experiencing this dizziness, please be thoughtful about how you put your towel on your head at night when you wash your hair, because that kind of quick movement moves the hair in the inner ear. That's right? Exactly. And if there's crystal buildup, we think that they're actually estrogen depletion.
This is what I heard. The crystals are estrogen depletion or some calcification.
That's right.
Inside the inner ear, and that causes it. Because I've also done it. People are going to be like, what is she doing in the shower? I've also done it in the shower. I'll put my head upside down to rinse the back of my head, and I don't know, I have active showers. and then I have to grab onto the walls of the shower.
It's real. I had it when I went through the perimenopause, and sometimes I'd get it while I was driving, and that was terrifying. I had to have to pull over to the side, and it's just terrifying. So watch your movements, slow down. Please, try to evaluate, okay, what does seem to trigger it. For some people, it is some level of anxiety that might promote it. For others, it's literally you're sitting still, all's well, and it just comes on you. You might consider some estrogen because it can help with some of these symptoms. You might certainly see an ENT just to make sure it is nothing else. But if you're in the throes of the perimenopause and you're having the other symptoms in addition, then chances are this is what it is. And it does go away, which is thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I still say thank God because I was raised by Irish Catholic and Italians. So it's I just go thank God.
It's all in the way you say it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's okay if I use the New York accent.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, maybe God has a lot to do with all this stuff. Who knows?
Again, my belief is that we're all hoping for the same things, and we are all reaching out to deities or entities, hoping that they will help us in the same ways, and we have different names for them.
That's right. That's right. So I like that you made this comment that your teacher said destiny is looking backward.
Destiny is seen by looking backwards.
Seen by looking. Can we unpack that a little bit? How do you interpret that?
I interpret that as when, very similarly to when people say, gosh, if I had known that this was going to happen in my life, I never would have worried about X, Y, and Z. And so your life, you make decisions, or there are interventions, or there are chance happenings of experiences that direct you or redirect you to a certain space and place and time. And when you get there, you can look back and go, oh, that's why that happened. That's why I did that. All of those things, had they not occurred, would not have gotten me to this place. And I'm not speaking just for myself. I'm just speaking for everyone. When you get to that place and you can look back and have that aha moment, a lot of the time what happens is worry slips away, searching in the sense of not feeling like you have enough purpose or that you aren't full enough slips away. Things just make sense. And when I had this experience and I said to one of the monks, I said, I realize that I have been leading up to this my entire life. And he said, and if you look backwards at your life, you will see that that is true, because destiny can only be seen by looking backwards.
Makes me pause because I'm now just quickly looking backwards in my own life. And I'm going to have fun thinking about all those different moments that I think particularly were hard, but also celebratory.
Absolutely.
And,
I've had a challenging life. My life has not been easy. I think some people look at me and think like, oh, she's must have it easy. But the reason I have joy and the reason that I'm jovial is because I have had perspective handed to me so many times that I've gotten to a place where I'm not, it's not impossible for me to feel grief. There are things, of course, that would knock me right over, but day to day, the little things, they really don't matter because I have experienced so many bigger things.
Yeah.
And the last comparison I want to make about seeing destiny looking backwards, I think some people articulate it as you have to remember everything happens for a reason. And that's a hard one because, if you were to lose someone you really love or something you really love, or if you're very sick, it's hard to say, okay, this is happening for a reason. But everything does lead to the next decision, to the next step.
I don't know if I shared this with you, Allison. So I was interviewing someone a few weeks ago on GynoCurious, and she was sharing. She was a writer who wrote this really great book about. Oh my gosh! I just had a memory blank. So this is it. It's happening.
Perfect demonstration of menopause.
Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What is her name?
Oh
Judy
my gosh.
Bloom. Judy
Yes.
Bloom.
Okay.
Sorry out there. It's coming back slowly but surely.
Slowly.
So anyway, this young writer, Rochelle Bergstein, wrote this book about Judy Bloom and her writing. And it was just so profound. But anyway, at the end of the recording, she had experienced breast cancer at a very early age, like 41.
Mm-hmm.
And I revealed my own cancer history, which I had never done on the radio before.
Wow.
So here I am talking about it again. So clearly it's the moment for it. But I remember when I was sick and people would say to me, oh, there's the gift of cancer.
I've heard that.
I first of all, I did not like that word. The gift,
Of course.
there's just other things I'd like to receive.
Yeah.
But the truth of it was that talk about lessons,
Yes.
talk about opportunity, talk about kind of putting shit in perspective.
That's right.
It was amazing. And, no, I never want to go through it again, but I can say, just as you're describing, that these events in our lives that we just think sometimes we think we may never get through, or it's going to change us in only a negative sort of way, that we will hold grudges or we will be angry. And I've seen it. I've seen people who have had diseases that just make them angry. They're so angry.
Oh, they're so angry.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate. Or
Yeah.
even people that are struggling emotionally or socially or, having trouble evolving, and they're trying so hard to act like nothing's wrong. And you can look at them and know they're about to explode, even though they're smiling and trying to act like they're happy with everybody. And it's very sad because it's a sickness. It's a sickness in itself. And if you just accept it and be willing to change and learn.
Yeah, there it is. It's learning. And I think that you and I would agree. These aren't easy lessons.
Oh my gosh, never.
And again, some of these lessons we don't want in our lives, but they come for whatever reason there is. And so it's what you make of it. It's again talking about this dizziness, these moments where the room is spinning and your world is turning upside down, and you want to vomit, or you want to
hide.
Yes.
You want to stay in bed.
Yeah.
You want to run away. You don't want to tell anybody what's really happening.
That's right.
There are many parallels to this experience, the physical experience and this part of life. But absolutely. Instead of just saying like, okay, here I am. I am uncomfortable. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm sad. I'm angry, whatever it may be, whatever feeling comes up. But I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to look it in the eyes and face it and process it.
Yeah, exactly. And you're speaking to kind of this whole host of symptoms and the experience of the perimenopause, which was so shamed for so long and so hidden for so long. And we are thankfully, again, at this place where everyone's talking about it. There's it's everywhere on social media. And I don't want us to lose the momentum, because the more we speak about it, the more we learn about it, the more we respond, the more we talk to each other about it. Because, man, when I had the dizziness, I didn't tell anybody. Well, because I was also like, oh, I can heal myself. Yeah. And that, yeah. But it's so important, because us talking about it, Allison, I'm hoping that as you're listening out there, that you're like, oh man, that happened to me yesterday. And okay, I don't perhaps have a brain tumor. I am just.
Right. Learn from my mistakes.
Well,
I talk about it very freely.
Good.
Again, I've done a lot of work over the years, and I know this is not easy for a lot of people, so I don't want to sound self-righteous, like, oh, I can talk about it so easily. I've had a lot of suffering. I've had a lot of moments. I've had to work very hard. I've just come to a place where, again, I've had a lot of difficult times and a lot of loss, that I'm able to look at something like this and go, well, this is nothing compared to like my mother dropping dead at an early age, or my kid having an issue with her heart, just these things that are much bigger. So I don't criticize anyone. If you want to talk about it, I walk around and I'm like, hi, I'm so sorry I don't remember your name. I have this like menopause brain thing going on. Or I'll go somewhere and someone will see me staring in the middle of the supermarket, and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, why am I here?
And laughter.
True story.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure of it. It's yes, and laugh. Please laugh, because part of this journey that I'm discovering more and more as I speak to women and speak on GynoCurious is that this time in our lives, as you just said, is a time where I think we are moving into some of the greatest power we can have.
I think I'm about to hit my prime, or the beginning of my prime. And I do want to share something that one of my own therapists said to me years and years ago. Not that many years now that I think about it. It was like 5 or 6 years ago. And I had said like, oh my gosh, I think I'm starting perimenopause. Like my period's changing and I can't sleep. And I clearly must have looked panicked, thinking I was too young for it. And she said, well, aren't you lucky? You are going to free up so much time in your body and life that you are about to become the most interesting, prolific, creative part of yourself that you've ever been. And ever since then, that's how I've looked at it.
Yeah, it's great. So there's this sociological theory or hypothesis called the grandmother hypothesis. Scientists have asked, why why would we have this experience called the menopause and postmenopause? It doesn't, we're at increased risk for diseases. We're not reproducing anymore. Like, what function could we possibly have if we are not having a lot of sex? So sociologists began to consider what the value was. And this hypothesis postulates that the reason that we're living longer is that, in fact, the grandmother helps promote and perpetuate genetics because the grandmother's around to help tend to the fire, help support the care of the children, that it makes the mother's job so much easier, that the mother can be more prolific and the grandmother can continue to support the family. And I think it's not just that. It's also that we're in this time where we're not worrying about getting pregnant. We're not worrying about tampons and pads.
Right.
Where we're finally at a stage
Wearing
where we
white.
Yeah.
Accidents.
Yeah.
Cramps.
Yeah.
All of it.
All of it.
Diarrhea. I mean, I know many women who have said, like, my stomach is sick every time I have my period.
I've told you about the SPV sign. I know I have.
No.
Shit, piss, and vomit all at the same time when you have your periods. We have this lovely gentleman in the room with us who's just learning all about menstrual cycles now.
You're married, this is not the first time. Married to a woman, yes. No, it's true. Like, the amount of discomfort and thought of how to prepare for that, and anxiety of, oh my gosh, it's coming. Is it going to be as bad this month?
Well, that's it too. It's the cyclicity.
Ugh.
I used to say, oh, okay, I can get through it because it's another, 28 days until the next one. And then all of a sudden it would be like tomorrow. So think about the vicissitudes that we have had throughout our lives that we have learned to adapt to. And then we have this dizziness. And then we have the vicissitudes of irregular periods.
Vicissitudes is an excellent word.
So by the time, thank you, by the time we get to be a grandmother, parentheses, not necessarily with grandchildren, we are so freed up. It's true.
I feel like a badass.
I love it. I love it.
It just takes a lot to shake me.
Yeah.
And I think most women should feel that way.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly I've heard my peers talk about how they just don't care about making mistakes anymore. They don't care what other people think anymore.
It's such a gift. I mean, I'm about 2 years off of 50 now. So yes, no, I'm not a grandmother yet. Nowhere near. But I am, 2 years off of what is considered like the golden years, the middle age.
That's right.
And the liberation that has presented itself in my mind over the past year itself has me so excited for 50.
Yeah. So when you're listening to us chat and laugh and, postulate about what you might make of this second part of your life, I would just encourage you, rather than just focusing on the losses, and there are real losses. There's loss to tissue, elasticity. There's a loss to our vaginal elasticity. There's a loss of hair. There's a loss of other things.
I'm looking forward to the loss of hair if it's the whole body.
No more waxing. It's an amazing thing. We tend to focus in this culture on what we lose and not what we gain. And I'm not trying to be Pollyannish, but at the same time, I do think this is an opportunity to look around while you're holding both walls and the world's turning around and it quiets down. You're like, okay, where do I want to moor this boat? Where do I want to settle? Mm-hmm. Where do I want to feel in my body in the healthiest of ways, and how can I help my community around me? Because you and I, Allison, we like helping others.
Yes.
I can only speak for myself. It's just part of who I am.
No, me too. I couldn't
I tried to walk away
differently.
from it and I couldn't.
Yeah.
It's just so important. It's my calling. It really is.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Even when people are unkind to me, I'm kind of like, like Dory, like, just keep swimming.
Yeah.
It's just part of my DNA.
Yeah, it is. And that, there's that epigenetics where, our genes are not mutated by our experiences, but where our experiences do alter our genes in a way that they can then shift back. And this is the idea that, our mothers and grandmothers also, their experience impact who we are genetically.
Yes, indeed.
And I love this concept because it I don't know about you, but sometimes I behave or say something or feel something, and I'm like, I don't really know where that's coming from.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
All of the time.
Yeah, and I do believe sometimes I'm carrying the weight of my mother's experiences and my
I
grandmother's,
agree.
etc., right?
Yes, I believe in that very, very strongly.
Yeah. Teach me, how would a Buddhist respond to that concept? I mean, there's a sense of reincarnation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so how...
Reincarnation is to come back to continue to learn lessons so that you get to a point where you have no more lessons to learn, and then you can reach nirvana, which means you don't have to be reborn to learn more difficult lessons. So Buddhists look at life as suffering constantly. Even like little moments of frustration, that's suffering. But getting to a place where it is complete peace, it is complete understanding. There is no stress, there is no reaction, there is no pain. It's bliss, but not in like celebratory bliss. It's peace, it's calmness. Everything makes sense. So I would say that when someone has an experience and you feel like you're carrying something, that you want to not let it penetrate you too much where it gets in your way, but pay attention to it and listen to it and take it as something that you need to process in this life so you don't have to come back with it again.
Good lesson. Really good lesson.
Yeah.
Because we also, as humans, have an incredible capacity for denial and pushing it down and thinking, oh, I'm just going to forget about it. We don't forget.
No.
Our body doesn't forget.
That's right. And neither does the spirit, and neither do you when you try to go to bed at night.
Yeah.
It's like you can pretend like you're not bothered by something, or that you can let something go, or you can not care how you've affected someone or maybe hurt somebody, but it will come back up.
Yeah.
It will come back up.
Yeah. So we're living in a time in this country where there's a lot of otherism and a lot of schisms and, gosh, a lot of anger. And I'm going to take all that you've shared with us today, Allison, and really think about it, because I've really been trying to figure out how to process all that's going on in the world. And I'm not just talking from one side or the other side of the aisle politically. There's just something happening across our world that's very provoking.
Very provoking. There's a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are very difficult to perceive as messages or happening because they need to happen, because there's so much pain. But back to what I've learned and what I've been taught is that we have to accept the things that are happening on some level around us and continue to be our kindest and best selves. So that doesn't mean don't push back about something, but just do it really well and do it with good intentions and do it with love and kindness, because hate perpetuates hate. Anger perpetuates anger. We have to find ways to do it where you can be strong. Like the monks and everyone, they're very firm and very strong at times, but to do it with the right intentions.
That's it. And it's in a way, that's the overarching lesson in everything that GynoCurious tries to talk about, is the intention of finding wellness, finding health, finding groundedness, speaking to each other, speaking out loud about all the hard subjects that so many folks don't want to talk about or afraid to talk about. Intention with kindness and love. Yeah, it always sounds so, I don't know. It reminds me of, Peter Max and the patches I had on my blue jeans when I was a teenager, right? But it's true. It's just true.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not easy. That's why they call it a practice.
That's right.
You have to practice these thoughts and these intentions every day, even if it's 3 minutes a day. Just thinking, I'm going to proceed with kindness. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say sorry. I'm going to forgive. I'm going to try not to be angry. And I'm going to, most importantly, is try not to have negative thoughts about other people, because that just stirs up all of those terrible feelings. And that's why we have so much volatility towards each other.
Yeah. Do you think it's a practice, or do you think you could describe a practice? So I'm about to walk into a room with someone who I know I have conflict with. What might I do for a moment before I walk into that room?
I always say you take that moment to say, this is not about me, or you walk in thinking, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and I forgive you.
So even if this person comes out with some nasty comment or is critical or shaming, how do you work with that kind of action?
Well, you certainly don't have to expose yourself to someone that is unkind.
Right.
But the idea is to try not to internalize the anger. So you can put boundaries up, but try to know that if someone is being that aggressive towards you, I mean, unless you know you did something terrible, then you need to say sorry. But if that person is just being that aggressive towards you, knowing that it's not about you, and you set your boundaries, but you find sympathy for them and you forgive them. Because for someone to be behaving like that, you know that there is something tumultuous happening within them.
That's right. They've been hurt.
Oh,
They've
my
been
goodness.
hurt.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'd also empower you all to walk out, to walk away.
Right. Boundaries make the world go round.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great. So we're coming to a close. And I guess I'd like to ask you, what would you like to say to those out there listening to us?
Oh, well, golly. I think just simple, like come back to something super simple and just try to be nice. Be nice and be easy on yourself.
Because all of the chaos that we can internalize and the way we question ourselves and diminish ourselves, that doesn't help the dizziness that might be coming to you with the perimenopause and those decreased estrogen levels. And that biology and behavior are very intertwined. And sometimes we don't have a lot of control over biology. So we have to think about our behavior and our emotional responses. And we do have a capacity to process those things, right?
We do. And it takes so much more energy to be unkind than it does to be kind. I mean, look at your kids when you're like, do you want to talk to me? And they're like, no. You know, just for an example of how hard it is to be angry at someone and how much you have to do to yourself to hold on to that versus just let it go. Make up, move on, forgive, say sorry, improve, let it go.
Yep. Let it go. Allison, it's been a lovely bit of time with you today.
Yes,
Thank you
this is
so much
fantastic.
for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and the dizziness will get better. And
well, I'm going to call you if it does.
I'm there for you, honey. Always.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you to my co-producers, Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud, and to the lovely Maddie who's sitting in the room with us today, and to Dave Hoffman, my new editor for the show. Thank you to my listeners. Stay well, be well, and please remember to listen to your instincts and intuitions. They are the greatest of teachers, not to be ignored.
Always. Could not agree more. I was just saying this the other day.
Yeah, great.